All good to go. Thanks very much. Good morning, everybody, and welcome along. And thank you for giving up your time to be in the our Finance Committee meeting today. This meeting is being recorded in the Partini Room, 19 Kitchener Street, Mark, where it's being live streamed and will be available to view on Council's YouTube channel. We all right? Thank you. Health and safety, and I'll follow this sheet that I've run sheet I have here to keep what's in standing orders. The emergency exits room there and out the front if we need to evacuate the building. I'd like to invite a councillor to do please. Does anybody? I wonder if you would do the honours again for us. I'm sorry.
Would you like me to do it?
Oh, sorry. If you could do it, that'd be really
No problem.
I didn't pre-arrange this.
Not at all. Waria te rau takatu, waria te hinga te tinana, te waria te nakau, ke mahia ke watia. Waria te rangi e tiho ne, te papa e takatane, te hunge e huhu mai nei, ke tiruang marangi, ke tiruang manuku, ke tō te rangi mawio, ke tō te kine, ke tēnā o tātou. Tura a whiti whakamawa, ke tīna, huie, tāhi.
All right, so a call for apologies, please. I have one from C. Harry Wilson and another from
Alice has also apologised this morning.
Alice is not on the committee, so
Apologies.
yeah, my apologies for the early departure. All right, somebody move for those apologies be accepted. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. We do have a call.
Well, it's, I'm not sure we do, to be honest. I don't miss it, so it was,
Yeah. So,
we do with the menu.
yeah, so just a query in terms of your departure, what time? 10:45. 10:45. Okay, let's get through as much as we can. We'll start there.
Last minute's good, man.
Yeah, thank you. So do you have any conflicts of interest today? No conflict of interest, thank you. So public participation, and we have 2 people participating in public participation. So I'll invite you now to participate and let us know.
Just a handout if we could pass it around, please. Yes, so I think it's about the same.
Well, just a reminder, in public participation, you have 5 minutes to speak to us. Councillors, at the end of your presentation, councillors may ask questions for points of clarification.
Sure.
But we won't be debating this. There is an item on the agenda where we will probably have some conversation when Mike's presented to us today. So
Thank you. Good morning and thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Lauren Best and I run a small startup business in Greytown called The Lost Plot. We make jams, sauces and chutneys from produce that we grow ourselves or that we source locally, and we then sell those value add products at local artisan markets or through local retailers. With me today is Kylie Evans, who owns Laughing Owl Fudge. Under the Food Act 2014, to run such operations, we are required to be verified under a national program as having safe and hygienic production processes. However, in South Wairarapa, the cost of achieving this verification is highly prohibitive. The cost is driven by the council approach to this verification and is the issue I want to raise with you today. It is worth noting that numerous local businesses that require similar verification or food control plan approval have echoed this sentiment to us, including Choice Fruit, Wild Chips Muesli and Juno Olives, and I speak today for them too. As you can see in the data I've provided to you, the cost to achieving national program verification in the South Wairarapa is more than double that in Masterton and in Wellington. From my research, the key issues driving these higher costs in South Wairarapa are having no national program verifiers within the council, and so food businesses need to source an external verifier, those outsourced companies having no local representatives or present, and council charging a food stall permit for every market in the South Wairarapa, even though the food businesses are already registered with the council and verification details have been provided to the council. The South Wairarapa District Council verification costs provided to you are those that my business incurred a year ago, and the process was completed via video conference due to my verifying having COVID at the time. Our next verification, however, will incur significant additional costs due to travel time and charges and travel costs from the Hutt Valley. Some businesses requiring national program verification have already had to pay those costs from Palmerston North, making it even more expensive. In addition, by charging an extra stallholder permit fee for every market in the district to businesses already registered with the council, the costs further increase and it makes no sense whatsoever. In applying for that permit, we provide the same information that the council already has. I believe no other council in the Wellington region or indeed the rest of the country charges for such permits, just to be told information they already know. On the council website, we highlight that gourmet treats abound in Greytown, and in the Wairarapa Economic Development Strategy, under the comparative advantage heading, it states there are areas where Wairarapa has shown promise, such as wine, artisan and tourism, and there are opportunities to grow and harness these businesses. And under the productivity heading, it states, by cutting out the middleman costs, Wairarapa producers can produce bespoke products at a lower cost, making them more competitive. As South Wairarapa District Council, it is within your control to achieve exactly that and make businesses in your district more competitive by reviewing the charges your local food businesses are having to pay for national program verification and your charges for food plan certification to help local artisan producers be more competitive. Removing the unnecessary South Wairarapa food stall permit charges as part of the current annual plan process, and implementing a shared service arrangement across the Wairarapa councils to reduce the cost of national program verification, or insist external providers have a Wairarapa-based verifier as a minimum. These are all actions that are within your remit, and I ask that you consider implementing them to deliver on your economic strategy and allow businesses like mine to be more competitive. In closing, I'd like to emphasise that this is not a criticism of council staff administering the system, who have always been helpful and responsive for us, but more the system and charging regime they have to operate in and apply to businesses in the South Wairarapa. Thank you again for your time.
Excellent. Thanks very much for your presentation. Councillors, do you have any points of clarification?
No, Lauren, but through the chair, excellent presentation. Well done. I'm surprised it's on this. You know, that we double charge like this, is that? Yeah, I think.
Can we just
can
say what we'll do is that we'll, if there aren't any points of clarification, thank you very much for attending. We'll move into actions from public participation, and then we can discuss this at that particular point.
just brilliant, Chair. Can we get a copy of just what you read out?
That's fantastic. Okay, there was no other public participation at this stage. Okay, so we'll move on to A5, which is actions from public participation. Now, Ross, if you could raise a couple of.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor, you sent an email regarding something similar to this yesterday regarding business charges.
Yes, and in fact, I have a members report on the agenda today, which raises, in fact, possibly a wider issue, which is not so much the charges that apply to small food business, but as you said at the end, Lauren, it is a significant part of our local small and medium business economy. But actually, there are other charges that affect businesses also. And in members' report D1, I've in fact listed another couple of charges which seem slightly disproportionate here compared to Masterton. The reason I picked on Masterton was just it came up first in my Google search for other costs. But nevertheless, I think Lauren's best suggestion that this is something that should be consistent across the Wairarapa. When I meet a small food business, I might leave it at Stella Ballpark one week, Solway Market the next Saturday. People are travelling throughout, and where business shouldn't be impeded by which side of the river they're on, in my opinion. So what I have done in D1 is to suggest that we
Can we go to D once we, yeah, sorry, just so we have a wee debate around here, because, it obviously moves towards the mayor's paper, to this committee, and I really want to get into debating that, on the presentation of that particular paper.
But I think it's something we need to
And I was just going to suggest that perhaps we ask Russell and his team to do a report back to this committee or back to council as an action item, just on what we've raised today, so that we both would understand why these charges are implemented in the south and not necessarily across the district as a whole. So, okay, and so can we? Do you want that as a motion, or do we just move that as an action item? Thanks very much. All right, so no further. That's right. Yeah, look forward to getting that report. Yeah, so
Thanks very much.
thank you.
Yeah, we'll leave that there for everybody else.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
get
that's
on
great.
to what he's on.
Yeah, I haven't got. I've got a copy here. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Marvin.
Okay, so we move on to extraordinary business. Is there any extraordinary business going to be presented? Nothing? So, A7 confirmation of minutes from the last finance meeting. I'm trying to get myself in the last year. You with me? I take it that councillors have read the meeting, the minutes from the previous meeting for 15th of February 2023. And I'd like to have somebody move that they're for an accurate record. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Just bounce back to William.
And second, I'm happy to see. Oh, what do you see? Yeah. So matters arising from the minutes of the previous committee meeting, finance committee meeting on the 15th. Is there any matters arising that people want to discuss further? We should just go through the minutes from the previous meeting. If there are anything that you wish to raise.
Through you, Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to apologise. I didn't put an actions report. There was one action, but it was closed. It was the action to write a letter to
That's
Record New Zealand. So that was done also.
Yeah.
But that was the only item that gets closed.
So just for the benefit of those, that action item was for the mayor and the CE to write to the Ombudsman, the Auditor General in relation to the delay in our annual planning. In the report.
my recollection was actually that the action was to write a grumpy letter.
That's correct, yes. Which was, yeah, absolutely.
And it had an effect.
Yes,
because
yeah.
pretty much the same day that he got the letter, he said, "Oh, maybe you should go and talk to those people."
So the report done. The CFO and myself met with two representatives from the Office of the Auditor General who explained their position with regard to staffing and delays right across the country with various councils. So I've mentioned that in my report, all but brief. But as a result, we were given some assurances that these sort of things wouldn't occur in the future. So it remains to be seen. Thank you. No other matters arising. Information reports. So that's B1, finance report. I'll pass over to Ms. Ashworth to present her report and answer any questions that councillors may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So attached is the year-to-date Quarter 3 financial report, 31st of March 2023. I'm happy to confirm that this now includes the audited results from last year brought forward into the results. So the accounts are audited for last year and are reflected in the current year. In terms of our current financial position, the year-to-date results are showing a surplus of 1.3 million against a budget of 3 million. Now, some of these changes are around timing. There's always a timing difference between when we may receive income and when we may receive or spend some of the money. Some of the expenditure, increase in expenditure is also around timing of when we spend money on roading and when we collect the TA contributions. So that's always a consideration that we're managing. And as we now get closer to year end, we will be ensuring that those timing issues are well managed. We also receive funding unbudgeted income for expenditure, which is also unbudgeted, but generally they are netted off. So in other words, we don't always fund budget for the Mayor's task force, and we will accordingly spend whatever we receive. So those are always included in the accounts, but they don't have an impact on the results. Any questions on the results? The rest of the report goes into detail around some of the income and the way we receive our income. We budget to receive our rates income every month, but as we know, we send out 4 instalments a year. So that is covered in the rates report. And we receive a large amount of grants and subsidies from the likes of NZTA, other contributing income parties. And our rates make up 70% of our income, and the rest, 30%, comes from other sources. I take it that the expense report has been read, and the statement of financial position, the summary of investments and lending, and the balance of reserves. The balance of reserves is presented quarterly with this report. And then we present also a rates review summary. The rates review summary provides an indication of our rates collection, and the current position of overdue rates is that we have outstanding 2% of our total rates that have been billed. So that is quite an exceptionally low number, and we obviously monitor that carefully. Some of the information in this report is sanitized, if you like, for private information, but generally we don't have many rate payers who are unable to pay their rates at the moment. Any questions on the finance report?
Yes, I have one. Obviously, the biggest variation in terms of operating costs is land transport, and as you said, and the explanation that it was attributable to emergency works, flooding, that sort of thing, which would mean that we would expect most of it to be influenced by Waka Kotahi. When does that happen in relation to our report?
It can take 1 to 2 months. Of course, we then get to year end and we have to do a wash up as well. So in the next quarter, we expect that to be
Right.
a revised position.
That we put in a claim.
Generally, we have to pay for the emergency event and then claim it. Yeah, and the process is pretty smooth and straightforward.
Any other questions from this? One of the things we haven't done is receive the report at this stage, so I'd like to move somebody this council to receive the report. Thanks, Billy. Seconded. Thanks, Boz. In favour? Yes. Thank you. Great. So I'd like to compliment our our finance team on the preparation of these documents, because they're actually very simple and very easy to understand. And having taken the time to read through them, there are a number of things, obviously, that that we're made aware of, and I think that's the most important. Just a couple of things in the report, and I guess I'll move to the Wellington Water and Operational Expenditure Forecast overspend. Do we want to go through that?
Do you want to cover the?
Okay, yes, so let's, no, sorry, we'll go through the order as it's like, so that's great stuff you wouldn't mind. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, a very brief update on the annual report. The final audit was completed on the 26th of April, and there were some minor adjustments to the annual report that were considered to be markups. And in finance terms, that means minor changes to the way the information was presented. In particular, one of those items was Three Waters Reform. Instead of calling it the Three Waters Reform, it's been renamed to the Water Services Reform Program and Audit Speak. And so it required the annual report to be amended to reflect the current position of the reform as at the 26th of April. So until an annual report is adopted, it is still considered to be in draft form, and anything that happens until the adoption date has to be reflected in the annual report is significant, and the Three Waters Reform is a significant change to our annual report. So that's the delays were obviously, we know that Audit New Zealand have resourcing issues and being unable to complete the audits. So that pleased to report the annual report is now complete in its draft form, and will now go to this afternoon to the Risk and Insurance Committee for assurance to be presented for final adoption on the 7th of June at the next council meeting.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions with regard to the annual report?
I was thinking she might have a small party with that.
Yeah, I think so.
Fireworks smoking or something.
It's certainly been a long, drawn out process
Well done.
from midway through last year to now.
Yeah.
Away from July. All right, so no questions on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. No,
I'd just like to point out that, sorry, I'm speaking my role as acting CE for the day.
that's fine.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to recognise the fact that we're having just finished the audit. We're now going into the interim audit period as well. That's right, isn't it, Karen? So it's the gift that keeps on giving, it seems. And that in itself is a significant piece of work that the team needs to undertake.
So just to add to that, Audit New Zealand have been in touch this week and started planning for this year's audit. They have publicly declared that they will resume their normal timeframes audits this year. So that would mean, from our perspective, that we would be now doing the interim this month, with final audit due in July. And we would have to get the annual report ready for council adoption by the 30th of September. It's October. Sorry, ready, not adopted.
Sorry, yes, and the legislative, through your chair, apologies, the legislative timeframe is a pretty
But we have to have it ready for councillors and Audit New Zealand by no later than the 30th of
September. Yeah.
So we'll be having another one soon.
Excellent. Thank you. And my apologies. I forgot to acknowledge you as acting chief executive. for the day. So please feel free in that capacity. Thank you for that. Right.
Right, Wellington Water.
Yes.
Next item. So, Wellington Water, as we know, our relationship with them, and they are asset managers for all of our water. We have annual budgets with them, both CapEx and OpEx, that are approved by the annual plan process and adopted by council. So, in the current year, the OpEx budget is 4 million and the CapEx budget is 5 million. Now, historically, Wellington Water have sort of struggled to maintain those budget levels, and we're now starting to see some changes and reprioritisation of work and a request for further funding. So Wellington Water have requested an overspend or an unbudgeted expenditure of an additional 300,000 over the current year's budget. And I will ask Wellington Water and perhaps Robert to expand on the reasons for the overspend or the request to overspend.
So do we have Wellington Water on screen or
I'm not
We
sure why.
haven't joined.
not? Nobody's joining?
Not that I can see.
No.
Otherwise, they'd be waiting to be admitted.
Will that go into the meeting?
No, they weren't. We sent them.
So that just means we problem because obviously there were a number of questions that we had on Wellington Water.
Do you want me to go and get Katie's?
Yeah, if she can.
So they haven't actually.
Who do you think you're coming, Robin?
It was, Charles Barker. Charles Barker. Yeah. I sent it to you.
So if we just try and sort out that little miscommunication or whatever you like to call it, just for a few seconds, just while we try and get them online or get some information. But I wonder if you'd like to perhaps talk a little bit about what you've identified in here with the information you've provided us as the overspend relates to emergency event in Featherston cost 240k. And obviously so that's 240, the overspend is 301. Yeah. So there obviously is some other smaller stuff perhaps that's cropped up, but I'm very keen to know because I think the bill for the likes of the overspend on the Featherston incident would have already been paid. So effectively you're asking us to endorse a retrospective plan. And the other question I have is that who's delegated to authorise this expenditure? Is it the CE or is it does Wellington Water have delegation to overspend or to spend unbudgeted funds? I don't believe they do. In fact, I've read in your dashboard that they don't have that authority to overspend. So there's a bit of a please explain, and I guess that that we're very anxious to know how this came about. I'm not saying that the expense is justified. I'm wondering about process and wondering how it ever got to the stage where Wellington Water basically had an open checkbook and could do what they wanted to do. So I wonder if somebody could explain that to me, please.
Hello, someone.
Sorry, Robin.
Yeah, well, what I can say is that all of those issues around process have been noted, and we've been working very closely with Wellington Water to ensure that this kind of situation doesn't happen going forward. You'll note their report, it's their dashboard, which is included in Appendix 2. There is an acknowledgement under the summary that they're waiting for approval for this overspend and now acknowledge that there is no approval in place for any spend over the approved budget. So they've acknowledged that, so that going forward we have some comfort that the situation won't happen again. The situation did happen last July. It was for the flooding events in Fitzherbert Avenue. And yes, this is a clean-up of the overspend that had been. Since then, we've been asking them to pull back the budget. And there were a couple of things that they did pull back. But then there was some essential maintenance on some of the equipment at a cost of 120,000 that had to flow through the expenses. And so we were not able to achieve and understand what we wanted going forward. So that's where we are currently with them.
So it raises another question about procurement. Yeah, I'll get to you in a second, your wish of you. Procurement as well. So one is that they seem to think they can overspend whenever they feel inclined to do so, or where there's an emergency. The delegation side of it really concerns me, the fact that they can do this and they haven't, this hasn't been brought before council. And it's certainly outside the delegation of many of our officers to be able to approve that. Procurement, we don't have any oversight. My understanding is of how they go about procuring goods and services within the organisation, because it doesn't sit within our procurement policy. They seem to have their own policy. So there are a number of alarm bells that are triggered in this particular point in time. And I'd certainly like Wellington Water to please explain themselves to us here. I'll go to His Worship first.
Yeah, well, thank you. Firstly, I feel intensely uncomfortable looking at Robin explain for something that's not theirs to explain.
That's all right. We don't have Wellington Water here.
Yeah,
So
thank you for your opinion on their behalf. However, I have to say, as I may have said before, I'm spectacularly unimpressed by this. And so the first question I'd like to know is who actually authorised the emergency event expenditure tax? This is a long time period. This is a long time period. So did they do it with somebody's approval, or did they do it off their own back? In which case, when we come down later on, they have been directed to look for further savings, but there's a risk that these will not eventuate, and somewhere else it certainly might therefore not be compliant. I'm sorry, I didn't accept that. We have an arrangement with them to do the work they're permitted to do. If they want to do something else, they do need to get it. We need to go through it. So frankly, the 240K is a decision they made. They had the option of making savings. So we take over 12 months of there, and now they're coming to us, at the 10th month, asking us to basically backdate something from that long ago. I mean, it's extraordinarily poor process. I mean, it's not the sort of thing you would expect to have to even discuss with an efficient solid business. And I think we're all aware that there seem to be a number of costs that we pick up from Wellington Water that seem to be extraordinarily strange. And I mean, Woody on a weekly basis shares some of these strange stories with me. The strangest of which I've heard recently is the forklift that we pay to be brought from Pororua, but probably a 10-minute job in Greytown, and then we pay for it to be. Don't look at me so weirdly, Karen. I'm just reporting what I know. Do we not have forklifts in the South Quadrant? Yes, we do. I mean, that they make decisions on costs, which possibly make sense in the cities, that make no sense at all. They've made no attempts, in my view, to adapt their business processes for a small, rural, somewhat distant. So that's the way business, and very much useful.
Yeah, so and that's good examples. And I think we need to perhaps get some clarity around this from Wellington Water. And Robin, I'm sorry to put you on that spot this morning, but I know that both you and Karen have been working on processes to streamline a little and get some more accountabilities in place. However, I think, and I'm still concerned with the fact that somebody within our organisation or outside our organisation authorised this budgeted expenditure, and until such a time as we perhaps get a report on how this occurred, I certainly wouldn't be endorsing it from this meeting or recommending it to council for endorsement. So I know that may pose a couple of problems, but it's like vote around the table. But the reality is that I don't think I'll be comfortable until I receive a full report on how this overspend occurred. And I guess the question to me is that, the Featherston event occurred some 12 months ago, and that bill would have been paid. Somebody would have authorised that, or somebody would have. We may have lost the ability to do some repair or some maintenance in some other field because it was probably deemed to be emergency works, but
It would have been paid under reactive maintenance.
reactive maintenance. Okay, so perhaps some detailed report on just how that. It probably doesn't need to come back to Finance Committee. Probably that report would need to go to a full council meeting so that we get the answer to some of these questions. So I'd be reasonably comfortable with that. Councillors, any other comments?
Oh, mine was sort of echoing what the specific extent. I mean, two things. One is that the system is in far worse condition than what I probably initially imagined when they took this on. But there does seem to be a cavalier attitude of them just going ahead, doing the work and going, let's get it done, and we'll worry about the bill later on. But once it's been done, we can't exactly take it back. I think as you're right, it's like, what's the process for, once it's in the ground, it's in the ground, and whatever. But it does seem to be a recurring.
Yes.
Like it's almost like a habit of theirs to do this rather than an isolated incident.
Thanks, Ross. Mr. Chair, I just like to reiterate your points and the mayor's points. I'm not very happy about this, and I won't be signing my name to it. I'm in a hurry without a very detailed report. As the mayor mentioned about the forklift, I've told him a couple of other stories I heard a couple of days ago. One, I don't like to tell someone how to run their business, but when it's costing us a lot of money, I'd like to see how it's charged to us and which way. And then when you look on the other side of the coin, we're actually a shareholder in that business, so we should be making sure that they're working efficiently. So, just sort of, I am actually going to put a report into the next infrastructure meeting about a few points. So, watch this space. Okay.
Sorry, through you, Chair.
Yes.
Can I confirm who will be authoring the report?
Thanks very much for the question, Amy. It's an operational matter, and I think that decision will come from the acting CE or the CE at the time to make that appointment.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
All
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Where are we? We've got. Sorry, I just sidetracked by that here.
Yes.
So at this stage, do we need item 4, recommendation for council approval of Wellington Water operational expenditure forecast overspend? So I don't. Do we need to have a resolution on that? Sorry, just following process here. We've actually asked for a
to move for the report on that come to the next council.
Yes, yeah. So okay. His Worship's move that the report on this on the Wellington Water operational overspend is presented to the next council meeting. Do I have a seconder for that? Yeah, thanks, Woody. All in favour? Thank you, great. Okay, right. So item 5 on Karen's report. We can, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I mentioned earlier, Three Waters Reform is now called the Water Services Reform Program. And in March and April, we were working with the NTU, which is the National Transition Unit, to do some draft settlement financial work. So my update here is purely from the finance perspective. It's not about the entire work program. And so we were meeting with the NTU and trying to establish our current net debt position as at the 30th of June 2022. So what that entailed was looking at all of the water expenditure and income over the last 10 years and confirming our debt position net of any redemption money put aside and all of the loans. So took all of the water loans, all of the money that we put aside to pay back, that was what the NTU were going to reimburse us for. So we worked with them to get to that position. That position was finalised, and they have requested further information for the last 10 years to determine our debt position from 2012. So we have since advised the NTU that we have to put all of this work on hold due to other priorities within finance. And with the change in the reform, we haven't had an update from the NTU as to how they're progressing any of this work. So I would imagine, and checking in with other councils in the region, the NTU have not issued any public statement about the progress of the work we did up to date. Now, since this report, we've heard that some councils can go early on the reform. They can go from the 1st of July 2024 up to the 1st of July 2026. And we are in a new entity of 10, which includes Wellington Water, Kapiti, Masterton and Carterton. So I understand there is a water reform mayoral meeting this Friday to discuss some of those issues or challenges. So it's just developing as we speak. So that my report is simply saying that we have put all work on hold.
Just a question in terms of the impact that it's likely to have on our long-term plan considerations, because with the uncertainty around reform, obviously with an election coming up again this year, and how that stacks up, how's that? What impact is anything like that likely to have on our projected long-term plan?
There's a long-term plan, would have to, if we wait to go into the reform from the 1st of July 2026, we would have to produce 2 years of the annual plan with water, and then the rest of the annual plan without. Some councils are suggesting that they wish to go early from the 1st of July 2024.
Yeah.
That way you could extract it from the annual plan, but it's not best practice to have an annual plan with water in and out.
No.
We really would prefer one or the
One or the
other
other.
to work through your projections, because it would be very hard to predict water positions.
How difficult would it be for this council perhaps to look at a consideration of delaying the long-term plan?
That's local government to decide. So there is pressure, I believe, from from councils to defer the long-term plan by 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
The deferral of the LTP by 1 year would really help. I doubt you'd get 2 years, but councils would really prefer to do a long-term plan with or without, but not both.
So I know that Martin's got to go, so I'd like to raise this as a consideration and have a resolution that supports that from this committee, that this council explore the option of delaying the conversations around our long-term plan for a period of 1 year. Initial onset. I'd like if we could have some report back to the council for the next council meeting as well, if that's possible.
I think at the moment Kaitoura lobbying on behalf of all councils.
Yeah.
It's certainly not, we could certainly make ourselves known that we're not happy, but ultimately it was local government that's.
Yeah.
So that's lobbying going on.
So we perhaps have that as an agenda item at the full council meeting, and just so that there can be some conversation with all councillors involved around it. So I'm happy to move that, and we've got and worship second that. All in favour?
Yeah.
Thanks, Kerry. Thank you. Excellent. Thanks. Jim, thank you, Scott. Thanks, worship.
Next agenda item, sorry, it's me again.
No, please carry on. Look, honestly, I think, the difficulty we have at the moment, of course, is that now we don't have a quorum. Yeah.
On page 3, I think we can do it. I haven't got any numbers. Here we go.
Still apologies.
So 3.
I thought it was three.
Three is a quorum, so we still have a.
Oh, we start.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you
So
very much.
just
Excellent. I will carry on then, please.
Okay, so we discussed at the last meeting that we would just put, just for information, the number of Lagoinas that we are receiving and the nature of some of those Lagoinas. Some of them particularly financial focused, but obviously since this report, there has been a lot more. So it was just to give the committee an idea of what kind of Lagoinas we're getting. And sometimes the content of the Lagoina can be quite tricky to navigate and to answer. So this is just for information purposes of what is currently the requests that we have on the table.
Which is yeah, quite interesting having a read through here. One of the questions I do have is you have here on a couple of the requests complaint without any. So complaints relating to what? I would like to see what the complaint relates to, whether it's building, whether it's consenting, whether it's environmental. It would be actually quite nice to see that on the report because it does tell a story. Lagoina requests are obviously requests made by members of the public, for instance, who feel that they need to have a little bit more knowledge or a little bit more information about some of the aspects of or actions of council. So just to see the word complaint there is probably pretty generic.
Just 3 each year, there's one down, four up from the bottom to rural policing.
It is plural.
Was it?
It is?
It is plural, yes. It's an actual term.
So what's?
Oh, okay.
I had to read it twice as well. It's only when you looked at the explanation that I'm just trying to remember what the explanation was.
It's about various ways to police and monitor and in relation to things like security and surveillance.
Not the buzzword.
Okay.
I'm curious about animal carcasses as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It does form a bit of a picture, and obviously these things are coming through reasonably regularly, absorbing a lot of council's officers' time at the same time. So I'm pleased that you put this as part of your report too. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Stefan seems to have all the complaints.
Yeah, I noted that. He seems to have a few. Yeah.
About confidentiality.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Moving on.
Me again. The financial delegations policy, just a reminder to everybody, and the policy is on our website, that we have a process of delegated financial authorities. So in particular, unbudgeted expenditure must come to whole of council for approval over $20,000 in terms of operating costs and over 50,000 emergency works and so on. So it's just a reminder to everybody that the annual plan budget is set, and any variation to that over a certain amount must come before the committee and the council, and Wellington Water is a good example of that. But they do not have delegated financial authority. So it's just a reminder to everyone when they're wishing to spend money to think of the DFA, but also the budget manager who is holding that budget, whether it's available as well.
And thank you for including that once again in the report, because it does highlight things like delegations, and I think councillors can really benefit from the fact that they can take a snapshot view and who has delegations for what, and then question accordingly. So I appreciate it. Yeah. Any questions from councillors? Okay. They, financial delegations are a consideration for councillors during, just trying to think what process we go through for financial delegations. So it's a policy as well.
Policy.
Yes, I think, yes, yeah.
Through you, Chair.
Certainly.
Lots of information was up with this, and that's a really good first stop. Got a question as an elected official around how do we do something or what's the rule for something. It will generally be in a policy and they're all on our website. If you're unsure about which policy it might be in, some of them are a bit cumbersome and old and are under review. Put me an email and just ask where you might find it and I can put you in the right direction.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Okay. Karen, there's a few. We're just
I
about.
think we've done.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just start at the top because I've done things back to front, and I'm sorry, Amy, I didn't follow as I promised it. So we'll just we'll go back. We've received the information, financial report, have we not?
Yeah.
Yep. Received and updated the annual report 2021 and final audit process. So do we need to move and second that?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so mover for that, please. Second, thanks. All in favour? Received the operational expenditure forecast overspend for 2022-23. We dealt with that so do we don't need to do any more with that? And
Do you want to move in second?
I think we should, yes.
To move in second, items 3, 5 and 6 together. I could write that in.
Okay, that would be great. Yes, I'm happy to move 3, 5 and 6.
Yep.
Second for that. Yeah, Boz, thanks very much. All in favour? Against? Carry on. And that's completed. That isn't it? Yeah. Right. Just research. Chairperson's report. C1. Somebody like to move, receive a chairperson's report. Thanks, Woody. Seconded. That would be me. Thank you.
You move, I'll second, let's keep going.
So apologies because it's fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of detail in it that we haven't probably discussed other than perhaps the where am I? The meeting with the Officer of the Auditor General, which I consider went down reasonably well. We had a fairly robust discussion, did we not? And expressed our concern about the delay in the production, or sorry, the oversight of our annual report. We were assured by the Auditor General's office that recruiting was a problem for them, and the immigration sets were not accommodating those people that we needed to bring in from offshore to assist us in this process. And I actually read an article, I think that Masterton have yet to adopt theirs as well. So we're not the only council. I understand there are a number around the country. However, that doesn't excuse the Officer General for the delay in getting where we need. So if there's no other matters arising out of my chair's report, we did move and second. Yes, we did. Yeah. And if there are no further questions, we'll move on. Okay, so E13. Oh, sorry. The report from Mayor Connell, D members report. Bear with me 2 seconds and I'll find one here. No. So the members report relates to obviously the conversation that was had in public participation this morning, and it raises some questions that perhaps the Mayor could have perhaps spoken to his report, which he's since had to leave. Can I suggest that because of the absence of the Mayor who's presented this report is And we've had some conversation around, seeking some, I think, what did we discuss at the, actions from public participation, that we seek a report from
Russell,
Russell and his team. Yeah.
I think it's a, so have your
Um,
big shoulder.
So it was, sorry, through you, Chair, it was, Russell's team report on what Kylie's raised today. So
Yeah.
I'll put the specific word around minutes, but, I guess that's a little bit broader in terms of,
Yes, so perhaps, a recommendation, given the, mayor's not here to talk to his report, perhaps a recommendation is, from this committee is that we ask Russell, and his team to report, on the mayor's concerns with his paper, as an action item perhaps, and report back to, us or to,
sorry, within the paper, I think it was being asked for a report on the annual fund, in writing to go to the deliberations workshop in June.
right.
So,
Yeah.
because I guess this next meeting would surpass that.
Yes, work.
So just timing wise.
Yeah, so is that possible? That a report can be presented to deliberations during the annual planning process?
I'm not sure Russell knows quite.
I'm sure.
Yeah, Russell's not quite sure what we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, obviously, have you seen the mayor's report, the mayor's paper? Sorry. I thought officers may have been able to. Right,
It was explained that this is normally part of an annual
yes,
process. It's part of the LTB review.
And through you, Mr. Chair, I'm mindful that if it's to go to a workshop and the workshop isn't a decision-making meeting, then that might in itself be an obstacle. So I'm just got an opinion on them.
So just through you, Chair, the annual plan is when you set fees and charges.
that's right.
So we would bring the fees and charges to council for the 7th of, what's the date of the meeting, the 28th of June for the annual plan final approval.
Yeah.
We have chosen not to consult on it because there were no changes proposed. To change fees and charges now, and you potentially will need to consult on it because it's significant. So that's just something to be mindful of. You're really unlikely to be able to get consultation in. It's impossible to get consultation in between now and the setting of the annual plan. And the logical point to review for a significant whole review of fees and charges would be to do that as part of the long-term planning process.
For you, Mr. Chair, may I suggest that one other option might well be, for expediency's sake, because we certainly don't want to be seen as a handbrake, that is one opportunity to look at it as part of the LTP process. However, consultation can occur at any point. And so maybe we just need to look at the most appropriate time to look at that, to make sure that councillors are fully equipped with all the information, rather than seek to rush it in any way as part of the actual annual plan process.
Okay. So there were some concerns raised this morning about the differences between fees and charges from our neighbouring councils. It's always difficult trying to align these things because it's not exactly the same model.
No, quite.
So I'm just thinking that we've got a paper in front of us from the mayor who's asked for specific things, and I think perhaps and officers obviously haven't seen that paper. You haven't seen that paper.
Well, no, but I mean, Mr. Chair, I'll come back to the original topic in the way it's just been raised. If there is a concern in terms of due and comparative fees and charges assessment across the Wairarapa and consideration around that should land in LTP space.
Yeah.
The other component within it is that we normally do this comparative checking, what our needs are for the council for fees, what our background has been over the 2 years. So that thinking has gone into consideration around the annual plan, so that we can't overlook the fact that thinking is already occurring within
Yeah.
yearly consideration. Also, you would look to, when you look to explore the difference between councils, there's the topic, as you've just alluded to, is the private public split. And each council has different drivers. So the notion of the difference between councils, there's factors that are at play, but I would make the clear point that our thinking of these is done on a regular basis at officer level. And if we think there's a rationale and reason to change, we can take that up. And if the impetus is for to do the change, then that is something that is captured within the LTE process.
Yep.
But I wanted to give you that background as it's not a topic that sits not considered
Mhm.
during the year.
No, that's fine. So we have so it's a little confusing, unfortunately, because we've had this presentation this morning, and we've got an action item that's come out of that presentation every night.
Yes, from the presentation,
Yeah, right.
Joe Russell's team
Yeah.
did a report on what she had raised around food charge.
I don't know if I'm going to carry on much more with, oh, sorry, Russ.
Only other point I didn't cover for context is, like any council around the country, consideration has to be given to fair and reasonable fee charges for service. And within that, you look at your history and your trend and whether you're going to make a change or not. But we also have that onus of that fee should be fair and reasonable without overcharge.
Chair, so just to explain with it on what with participation she was saying with things, and also not just that, but also that if they're doing a stallholder license and to pay again and provide information that councils will be got, so there's some sort of operational issues in there as well, being charged twice and whatever. So it wasn't just about a strict comparative council to council, it was also actually within what we're doing, how we're charging them as well.
And
Because I know by own personal experience as a stallholder and having it usually at the beginning down to
so, and there was some concern raised about process as well, and duplication of information. Okay, so let's just see what we're going to do with Bart's report, given that he's not here to. I think the information, I think we probably need to make a recommendation actually on this.
I think it's kind of encompassed in the action already, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't want to feel that we haven't given the amount the opportunity to debate what the situation or the questions that he's actually raised in his thing, but there's not much more we can do beyond having this conversation, and also mindful of the questions that were asked this morning and the action items that have come out of that. So I think we'll just park that. There's not much more we can do, and we'll move on to the next section. Thank you. Which where am I? So we're moving into the public excluded. Do I have a mover to move into public excluded? Thank you. Second, thank you. Or against it, that'll be great. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for the members of the public that attended.
Before we run out of oxygen in this room.
That's a bit more, man. It's at least.
Definitely.